turn it up to 10. Sorta like a bad habit, we gon' do it again. Ready or not, we're gonna tie some ends. Go tell a 36, try to grab all the friends. We're back like we never left, on track like a treble clef. Skip a beat on the 7th rest, bring feast, we don't pass them over. We got the first fruits, no way to show us. This yoke is easy, this burden's light. Even with a loud mouth trying to eat at the mic. Even if we down south, the humidity spike. Veils torn in two, so we gon' be alright. It's all grace till the Hoff goes off. Heretics better run till the top blows off. Got them all stood still like a jaw full of Botox. Time to break them down like a jaw on a blow pop. Don't stop, they're in need of it though. Through grace by faith, they could easily grow. New wave, new age, new way to see bro. Now one truth, life, one way to his throne. Can't live on that bread alone. Every word of God's mouth will fuel me on. That's scripture, that's Christ alone, that's grace alone, that's faith alone. All glory to God, cause that's his alone. Since the lamb's been slain, we can each belong. The Lord is my strength, my peace, and my song. I'll lay it all down at the feet of his throne. So relax, got it still in control. He knows every care, every fear that you hold. He knows every hair, every need for your soul. Nothing new around here, this story's been told. Bet you feel weak and your life is in tatters. With bruised feet, your body is battered. You can't reach, trying to climb up that ladder. Sit back and hold fast till Messiah matters. It's all grace till the Hoff goes off. Heretics better run till the top blows off. Got them all stood still like a jaw full of Botox. Time to break them down like a jaw on a blow pop. Don't stop, they're in need of it though. Through grace by faith, they could easily grow. New wave, new age, new way to see bro. Now one truth, life, one way to his throne. Bet you feel weak and your life is in tatters. With bruised feet, your body is battered. You can't reach, trying to climb up that ladder. Sit back and hold fast till Messiah matters.
It is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. This is Messiah Matters number 448. My mother always said, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. But I have a show to do. My name is Caleb Haig.
You got me. That's a good one. My mother didn't tell me that. I'm Robin.
Fair.
Actually, I think they did. One way or another. Maybe not those words.
What's up, man? You getting pumped? You getting pumped for ETS and SBL? Oh my word, it's coming up. Woo! I am pumped. I'm super pumped. You don't have any papers to give this year. Are you excited to relax and take it easy?
I'm excited. And it turns out Zondervan has a new Greek grammar they're promoting, so they created this big luncheon. It says, come get a sack lunch and get a free copy of this book, and then the
ham sandwiches for all.
The two professor ladies who wrote it are going to give their spiel.
And you're going to go?
I talked to your dad about it. He said, let's go. Well, then I went to register, and they're like, oh, it's all sold out. And then I'm like, well, are they going to add more seats? He's like, just show up. He said there's going to be people probably who don't show up, so don't even worry about it. Not that we're looking for food or anything. It's just, but a free book. Hey, Greek grammar book.
There you go.
Gotta learn something from a new book.
That's right. Exactly. All right.
I'm all about learning.
Yeah.
Learning and discerning.
I'll tell you what, man, the Riverwalk, last time we went to the Riverwalk, it was one of my favorite venues that the ETS and SBL's ever been at, and everything is so close, but that convention center is giant. It is really big, so I'm actually very excited to go. I'm pumped to be there. It's the nice thing is The nice thing is that the Riverwalk is right out the back door, and there's all sorts of different, places to eat and things to see. So if you ever have any downtime, which we rarely do, but if you have any downtime, you can always go out and walk the Riverwalk. I think I walked the Riverwalk one time. I think it's a mile or something like that all the way around. I think I walked it one time last time, and I think you and I went to the Alamo last time, didn't we? Because that's right outside the side door.
Yeah. The Alamo's there, a little bit up the street.
Yeah, it's the Alamo is. I think we could walk to the Alamo in 3 minutes. So anyway, that's not the highlight.
I think
for me
in honor of our episode, we got to call it the Olam O. The Olam O.
Wow, dude, your dad jokes.
Everybody will know they'll know what this means in a minute.
On point. Okay. Well,
I think it's secret Hebrew coding.
Exactly. Before we get started and do this out of order so that you're caught off guard, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. If you have, that's fine. Give us a thumbs up on this video. It sounds weird, but it actually does help us, and we appreciate it. CHegg@TorahResource.com. CHEGG@TorahResource.com. That's where you can send emails, tell us whatever you want to, and send us show topics if that's your thing. Comment line 253-465-3205, 253-465-3205. Okay. If you want to catch past shows, MessiahMatters.com. And finally, this show is produced by TorahResource.com. Hey, I'm going to tell you a little secret that people don't know about Torah Resource right now. If you order any kind of a physical product right now, and this will go on for a little while, but if you order a physical product, so not a direct download, but any kind of a physical product, we will not only send you that physical product, but we will send you 3 bookmarks. They have the Torah reading cycle for the 3-year portion, the apostolic reading for the 3-year portion, and the Haftorah portion on each one of the bookmarks. So if that's your thing, if you're in the 3 years reading cycle, go buy something from Torah Resource, and you will get all 3 of those. It is we've actually gotten a great response. We've had a lot of people call us and tell us that they are enjoying them. Okay. With all that said, let's go. We cut our show short last week by about 10 minutes. We'll try not to do that this week, but you never can tell. Here we go. Tabby M wrote, I don't remember if this is an email or if this is a YouTube comment. They say, I appreciate the conversation around 33 minutes regarding good works, including that of the Torah and establishing sanctification. This is on a video, so this must have been a YouTube comment. Sometimes I get confused because you rail so hard against the Hebrew roots, which I don't claim, and uphold the church. But the church paints, for the most part, that law is done away with, and if it's challenged, it's met with complete vitriol. Now, okay, let's stop for just a second. A lot of truth in this email so far. Yes, we rail against the Hebrew roots. And yes, in many cases, we uphold the church. We'll talk about that in a few seconds. However, I think that it depends on the church. It does depend on the church. To say that if you say the law is good or whatever, or that we should be keeping the law, it's met with complete vitriol. That might be the case in many church establishments. And I'm not even suggesting that that's not the majority case. It probably is the majority case. However, there are many good churches out there that are at least semi-pronomian and if not, are very receptive to the law. So I understand what Tabby's saying here, though. Let's keep going. I'm curious what aspects make you uphold the church's shortcomings over that of the Hebrew roots. I see it as both are wrong in aspects, but to believe God's instruction is wrong to follow seems like a big error to not uphold to the same standard. You don't need to reply. I just enjoy your guys. Well, we're going to reply. Hate to tell you that. Okay, here we go. So, the question at hand, why do we rail so hard against the Hebrew roots while upholding much of the church? I will go first. First of all, I think that the Hebrew roots I think we're closer to the Hebrew roots. So when someone is, what's a good analogy? When someone is defecating inside the camp, it's a lot easier to throw stones. Whereas someone is on the outskirts of the camp, it might be less as easy. But here's the other thing. I think that the Hebrew roots, the way that I define, now I completely agree that there are many definitions of the Hebrew roots, and many people define the Hebrew roots differently than I do. And so maybe I should define what I mean by the Hebrew roots. The Hebrew roots, in my opinion, comes out of Armstrongism and the Worldwide Church of God, and also the Church of God Seventh Day, which is an offshoot of Seventh-day Adventists, but they rejected Ellen G. White, and they were led by this one guy. And basically, in the 30s, he went off the rails, and he started to deny the deity of Christ. But beyond that, I don't know if he denied the deity of Christ. I think he became Unitarian. So anyway, but his name's Dodd, by the way. Beyond that, he became a sacred namer. In the 80s, what you have these groups kind of coming together after Armstrong falls apart, and you have the formation in the first time that the term Hebrew roots is used is in the 80s. And this is right about the time that my father is coming into the Messianic movement. I see the Messianic movement and the Hebrew roots movement as two separate movements. And so why do I rail against the Hebrew roots movement? Well, the Hebrew roots movement, I believe, has given up on, for the most part. Now, there are plenty of great people sitting in the pews within Hebrew roots churches or synagogues or whatever you want to call them. But ultimately, the Hebrew roots movement, in my opinion, has started out of heresy, which is they've given up foundational doctrine, such as the Trinity, such as a firm foundation of the 66-book canon. They have brought in all sorts of heresy, foundational heresy, such as sacred nameism, Hebrew word pictures, everything is pagan. I mean, the list could go on, the et teaching. So all of these things tend to attract, the Hebrew roots movement is attracted to. The reason that the Hebrew roots movement, in my opinion, is attracted to that is because they've given up on foundational issues. So they don't have a firm foundation to stand on. And since they don't have a firm foundation to stand on, they're sinking in the sand of heresy. Now, let's go to the church. In my personal understanding, the church has made some huge heretical moves. I completely agree with that. And I would also agree that it is possible that I personally have overcorrected. In other words, maybe I rail against the Hebrew roots movement too much, whereas I don't rail against the church as much. In other words, maybe it's off-centered. And I'll be the first to say that that's definitely the point. I'll give you an example of this in a few minutes. But when we look at the church, the foundational doctrine is there. We still have a belief in the 66-book canon to death, right? People are willing to die for that belief. We have a strong foundation of the Trinity, which I believe is not only biblical, but is painted all over the Tanakh and the Apostolic Scriptures. And so with these, in my opinion, are core doctrines that the church stands on. And I believe that the prophecies tell us that God has called people who are not his people, that is, people who are not Israel, he has called his people. This is the Gentiles. Throughout history, we have seen that the Gentiles have been floated. The remnant of Gentiles that believe have been carried along the waves of time by the church. Now, I don't understand why God would do that. And the Catholic Church at that. I don't understand why God would do that, but that's what he's done. So I'll give you an example in a few minutes, but I'm going to pass this over to Rob for now. Rob, why do you think that we rail against the Hebrew roots movement more than we do the church?
From my view, it's a great question, because just at a gut level, I think the Hebrew roots movement is more dangerous. And the danger it touches on the things you just pointed out, is usually you have a rejection of authority. Whereas in general, again, I can only speak from my limited experience. So I can only, go from my own experience. But generally, churches retain not only the canonical commitment, like you said, but they are they see themselves as sheep needing a pastor. The hearts of a general, like if what's the generous interpretation of a church is, it's like, oh, they believe the Bible, even if they don't understand it, they still believe it. It's like they have this kind of, I don't understand. I believe the Bible's true, but you could open up a verse to me and I'm like, I don't know. I have to ask my pastor. Like that's the traditional American Christianity that I have in mind. Even if they're a strong traditionalist denomination that has a bunch of additional stuff that they think is part of defining who a true Christian is, there's still a respect for authority and an unshakable, like you said, even die for the canon, even if I don't understand it. And it's in those places where we have the academic institutions, support of academic institutions that promote, of course, I'm talking in the more Protestant side of things, learning the languages. This is the big the wake of the Reformation is
right.
Importance of learning the original languages, manuscript studies, building lexicons and grammars, all this kind of stuff. The Hebrew roots is a different kind of beast. The Hebrew, in my experience, there's no respect for authority. There's only suspicion of academic institutions, although there is a privileging, ironically, of Strong's Concordance and Hislop's Two Babylons, Thayer's Greek lexicon, things like this. Why? Well, because they're over 100 years old and they're public domain. So someone can do a bunch of reading at no cost to themselves because these resources are available and invent their own system of meaning. And so in my experience, the Hebrew roots is a competition of people, individuals who are unshepherded to come up with more and more creative, kind of mind-blowing interpretations to try to get people, to justify not being part of the church. And there's no willingness to die for the canon, right? There's the idea of a free idea or a free freedom of ideas, right? You could come, we're going to bring you in and you teach that, the Jubilees, the book of Jubilees, or the book of Enoch or all this, that is a core, calendar, questioning the calendar. Lately in some of the circles I'm in, people in this mode question, they don't even believe the scribes. So like my question to them is like, well, where do you get your Bible? Because they're like, oh, the scribes changed this, the scribes changed that. It's like, okay, so do you have like a secret tradition of the Bible that you're able to judge these, like where do you get your information? And so in a way, Hebrew roots is more of a do-it-yourself folk religion where you just scrounge the internet for resources to build.
Choose your own adventure.
It's like a homesteading. It's like homestead. Like Hebrew roots is homestead religion. It's like you have to use. There's an old barn that's back and rickety. It's like, oh, I'm going to salvage some of the lumber and build a chicken coop or whatever. Like it's that because it's independent. I don't know if someone comes along and tells me that I'm reading this wrong. How dare they? They don't know what I've been through. So there's it's a different culture. I think that you could say, and again, I'm speaking just from my limited experience, but I would say American Christianity and Hebrew roots are very different cultures. And to me, the one that has the poison is much more the culture that I would call Hebrew roots. It's much more, I'm not saying that the other one doesn't have problems. Anyway, that's probably why. But I would just say this: if you watch some of our mystery Bible theaters, like we don't just deal with Hebrew roots people. There's other strange stuff.
We think everybody's wrong. No, so here's the thing: is that do I think that the church is wrong? Yes. And if anyone's been on my Twitter feed recently, then you've seen I've been making a very strong case for where the church is wrong. I think that there's institutional, I would even call it heresy, that stems thousands of years in the church. And I think that it's learned. So the point is that the reason that you have people who reject the Sabbath, And the kosher laws is because they have learned from their predecessors why that is. It's become almost a new religion, and I'll be the first to say that. The religion that we see within many of the denominations of Christianity is not the religion. If that's what is going on with this thing? Why does it keep doing that? It's not the religion.
AI likes you, Caleb.
I guess so. Uh-oh, now I'm frozen. What is going on? The religion of the Bible is not the religion that we find within many denominations. Hang on just a second, guys. Let's see what is happening here to my thing. But let's also say this. Let's also say that that oh man, I'm frozen all over the place. Let's also say this. Let's say that when it comes to the Hebrew roots, boots on the ground is a little bit different. When I have gone to Hebrew roots gatherings recently, and when that has happened, I have no problem fellowshipping with people, but I think it's because the people in the pews are not necessarily always as vitriol as the people behind keyboards. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. Rob, I'm going to try to fix my camera here. See what we got going on here. Do we have anything else to say about that?
No. I think Hebrew roots I think there's a need behind it too that could be biased by our listeners and they ask that has, but Caleb and I would say don't lack, even in our own experience, apart from the emails and voicemails we get, in our own experience, we've seen the damage done by teachers in the Hebrew roots movement. So in other words, the trajectory is helping Christians learn the Bible better. And then at the same time, you have barbarians from the north trying to attack. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like there are two different fronts for the one Torah view.
Right. All right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not. This is going to look very odd, I think, to everyone, but I'm going to try to simply fix my camera real quick. Sorry, guys. We'll give you a different perspective here. Okay. Yeah, I can't see anything on my screen. There we go. Okay. That's what you get. That's what we have so far. Now look at that. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to our next topic. I hope that explains it for people. Ultimately, but the last thing I say on that, sorry, my brain is somewhere else. The last thing I say on that is this. I do think that we overcorrect sometimes. I believe there are really good people, really honest believers who are simply trying to do what the Lord wants. And I honestly believe that within the Hebrew roots. And so I think that the thing is that once again, back to the culture that Rob was talking about, there is a culture of I've been lied to, and since I've been lied to, I'm not going to believe anything. And so it really is a choose your own adventure kind of religion. You're not, I was talking to a guy yesterday online. He was not going to be convinced. It's low budget. It's also extremely, what do they call it's a shoestring budget, do it yourself religion. Yeah. And that's why, and I understand, it costs but you can get online and you can see Strong's Concordance for free, or all these books from the 1800s that have been scanned and available online, and people start reading those and they think, the ideas I'm having are based on this kind of scholarship. Right. But when are they going to read
scholarship from the 1900s? When are they going to read scholarship from the 21st century? That especially, the Dead Sea Scrolls was a big game changer in terms of understanding first century Jewish world. So yeah, I
think that
there's a reason why James says, Bible teachers have a different accountability structure before God. And that's dead serious, right? That's not like, teachers have it harder. No. Like if you presume to set yourself up like you're a teacher of the Bible and you think that you are not going to be, I don't know,
held accountable,
accountable to what because those are other souls.
But that's the point of the Hebrew Roots movement, isn't it?
I mean, you're messing around.
That's the point of the Hebrew Roots movement, though. The point of the Hebrew Roots movement is that there is no, you get to be your own teacher. You get to decide the truth. And I'm not saying that there isn't. The thing is that within Christianity, you have the ability to say, let's sharpen each other. It feels to me, and this could be wrong, but it feels to me like within the Hebrew Roots movement, what you have is essentially like the your truth is your truth, but my truth is the only truth. But you're not going to convince me of anything except for my truth. Like my truth is the true truth. And so anything you say is stupid. And to me, I think, I had a guy arguing with me the other day. He was saying, well, let's sharpen each other. Well, how am I supposed to sharpen somebody who is a flat earther who believes that we should throw out Paul's writings and, doesn't believe that Yeshua is divine? We're not going to sharpen each other.
They're drunk, but not with wine.
Right.
They don't even have a sober assessment of their own situation, in my view.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to go to Joseph. Joseph said this. So once again, this is a comment on a different video. He says, 3252, if Paul, he's quoting me, by the way, if Paul walks in with a Gentile, end quote. Caleb, in your opinion, do you think that Timothy was not Jewish? Timothy's mother was Jewish. Or do you think that more stringent groups required both father and mother to be Jewish? Or Paul was blameless in terms of adherence to the customs of the fathers and wanted no doubt to Timothy's identity? Or fill in the blank. Okay, so I think that in the first century, the lineage of being Jewish did not go through the mother; it went through the father. And we see this throughout the Bible in terms of kings.
So yeah, it's always son of a father, son of yeah.
So the point, it's not whether or not I think he was Jewish. I mean, was he Jewish by blood? Sure, Timothy was Jewish by blood. His mother was Jewish. But the point is that no synagogue in the first century is going to accept that. Just like no synagogue today is.
That's an innovation, halakhic innovation that happens after the destruction of the temple. Now that's a contended issue.
Well, the other thing is that I agree, but the other thing is that today it's the same. It's just flipped, and this has to do with the Crusades and other horrific things that the Christians did. We won't even talk about those now. But the fact is that it flipped. You can prove that a child came out of a mother. You can't prove that the father is the father. And so the point is that it flipped to your mother has to be Jewish to prove lineage. So that's what it is today. If I walk into a synagogue today and I say, well, my father's Jewish, they're going to say, well, you're not Jewish.
So the question is, why wasn't Timothy circumcised? It's because he didn't have a father that took him and circumcised him. Because that was the thing. The father claims, this is my son, and he's part of the covenant. And he didn't have that.
Right.
And because you could say, well, how come the mom didn't take him? So when Paul comes and takes him and circumcises him, even though he's an adult, it is a symbol of Paul saying, I'm like a new father for him, earthly father for Timothy. Like I'm claiming a fatherhood role for this young man. And he does it boldly in front of the community.
Right.
And he's going to defend Timothy as a member of the covenant, regardless of what other communities that might see Timothy. Some say, oh, you were already Jewish. You were already one of us. Or others say, no, your father was a Gentile. You're not one of us.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The halakhic, now I'm even being anachronistic using the word halakha there because that's not the word. Caleb, you just all of a sudden transported to a jiu-jitsu tournament or something.
Uh-oh. Ah, yes, I did. That's hopefully that's just on you. Yeah, it's just on you. Hang on, I'm trying to fix things over here. So let's wrap this conversation up, and then we're going to move to our main topic. So ultimately, I don't think that it matters whether or not I think he was Jewish or not. I think in the first century, the point is that Timothy would not have been seen as Jewish, and he wasn't circumcised.
Yeah,
So
if Timothy was seen as Jewish, there wouldn't have been a problem. Yeah, I mean, the whole reason Luke gives us this backstory is because this kid is an outcast from his community.
Right. We have an interesting question in the. We got an interesting question in the chat room. You
What's
ready
that?
for this? I'm gonna let you rail on this for a few seconds. AM says, I am so confused. A great teacher once said, the time for word studies is over. That was
that
for
me?
the 90s. She says, I didn't take that to mean now we're doing grammar. I didn't take that to mean now we're doing grammar. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. So
Well, if she's talking to me, I'm no great teacher. I wouldn't say that. I would say, I think what I meant is Strong's words. Like, I'd have to hear the exact quote of what I said, but I should clarify. What I mean is using the Strong's Concordance as the key to understanding the Bible. Like that, it's like your Strong's Concordance is all you need to. Because I see it all the time. I have people email me, and they'll give Strong's numbers next to words like they have. And so they use a Bible like eSword or whatever that has every word tagged to a number. And then they're reading the Bible in terms of these numbers, which has created an artificial scaffolding. It's an artificial grammar that has nothing to do based on what some guy 100 years ago coded each or tagged each word in the Hebrew Bible and the Greek with limited knowledge of the languages. And, to this day, those Strong's numbers have a real strong traction. But the problem is if you don't understand the grammar, you can ask questions and then look to the strong numbers tagging system as a method for answering your question, and it will lead you down. It's like pushing a shopping cart that the wheels are going and it keeps staring to the side, but thinking that like you're actually making progress with acting as if you have a shopping cart that's got great wheels, but it's not. It's not. It's always going to take you astray. You need to have, if you're going to be at that level, you want to read the Bible in the original languages. There's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. You got to study the language. And once you study the language, you're not going to use Strong's Concordance anymore. And if you aren't going to study the languages, if you aren't going to look at the Bible in the original languages, that's fine too. Use the other approach, which I suggested in prior videos. Go to the Bible Gateway website and read all the English translations of the verses that you're studying at the time. And you'll go, oh, okay.
See, I think that this...
It puts you, in both situations, put you more accurately where you are, which is in a position of not knowing.
I think that some
a
of this
position of going, I want to read the Bible, I want to learn something. Okay, you want to learn something? There's two paths. There's the path of reading multiple translations, and there's the path of learning the Bible languages. And those are two valid approaches available to believers.
I think that this comes down to a little bit the fact that Rob and I constantly are, I like daily, we're being contacted, and maybe this actually goes back to our first conversation about Hebrew roots. We're being contacted by people that I would consider to be Hebrew roots who are sending us things about, why we're wrong because of the Hebrew word pictures, or why we're wrong because of, whatever. I had this very long conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, look, you need to stop with the Hebrew word pictures. You need to go learn some Hebrew and then come back and we can have a conversation. And he said, how do you know I don't speak Hebrew? And his whole interaction was Strong's Concordance and,
it's false confidence.
Various things that work.
It's false confidence. Like, what good does false confidence do anybody in the world, let alone inside the flock, Yeshua's flock? False confidence is it's not sober mindedness. Sober mindedness and false confidence are very different modes.
No doubt. Okay, let's move to our main topic. Let's do this. Okay, so this is kind of like I don't even know. We've gotten multiple.
Is everybody
emails.
else seeing what I'm seeing? Just
No, they're
Caleb,
not. No,
a picture of Caleb at the.
Nope, they're seeing my video. It's.
Oh, cool.
I can try to change it for.
I'm
I can
seeing
try to
the
change it for you.
Atos,
You want me to change it for you?
Photo, but that's okay.
Heck yes, you are.
I know what you look like. So.
Heck yes, you are. Hang on just a second.
What would be
there
awesome
you go, buddy.
is to have that picture with your mouth going. I'm
sorry. I'm having a lot. I mean, I know everybody can tell. I'm having a lot of technological problems here. I'm all over the place. I keep losing all sorts of stuff. So I'm just dealing with it. I'm trying to deal with it. Okay. So this is a email that we got. We got one this past week from someone, but it's a view that has been presented to us by multiple people. And I think the reason why is because it's becoming a mainstream argument for people in the mainstream Christian belief that the Torah has been done away with. And I have written out essentially what the question is in my own words to try to shorten it, because the email that we got was like, I don't know, 6 pages or something like that. So here is my rewording of the question. The general question goes, I have people telling me that there are places in the Bible that say forever that are clearly not forever, like the laws pertaining to the tabernacle. How can we say the laws of Torah are forever if forever doesn't always mean forever? And I have gotten
forever.
Rob didn't know what that was from. I couldn't believe that. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Not the point. So the question is obvious. What do we do with the passages that seem to say that the things are forever? Now, let's give an example of where we as Torah pursuant believers would use the term forever. It is a sign between me and my people, talking about the Sabbath, between me and the people of Israel, that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. So it is a sign forever, right? And this is one of many, like the Leviticus 11, right? And the kosher laws forever throughout all your generations, forever throughout all your generations, right? The festivals, these are forever. These are statutes forever, right? So it's pretty much all over the place. And so let's go to a couple of places. Now, this is one that I pulled, Exodus 29:9. And you shall gird Aaron and his sons with sashes and bind caps on them, and the priesthood shall be theirs by statute forever. Thus you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. Now, the argument that I've heard on a verse like this is, well, Hebrews has done away with the priesthood. And so this clearly can't mean forever because Aaron and his sons aren't priests anymore. But my response to that, this is a softball, right? This is an underhand softball. My response to that is, well, the priesthood still stands. If the temple's built today, the priests have to be from Aaron and the Levites, right? You can't just have any schmo in there doing the priestly duties. And in Ezekiel's temple, although the high priesthood seems to be taken over by the prince, that doesn't mean that there aren't other priests in the temple. So I think that the priesthood will be established. And so I think that it's right. Now, there are certainly cases where forever in the Torah or in the Bible don't necessarily mean like for all eternity to come. And what I mean by that is sometimes there is poetic, like within poetic passages, you'll find people saying forever. And this is one that I found on a Vanity Fair article about the term forever. In the Bible, they brought up Jonah 2:6, which, by the way, if you don't know, Jonah 2 is all poetry. And so I believe that this is a veiled prophecy of the Messiah. Anyway, he's trying to paint a picture here. He says, "At the roots of the mountains, I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought me up, yet you brought my life up from the pit, O Lord my God." So I would argue here that this is not giving commands. It's what he's doing is he's trying to paint a poetic picture. So I really don't think that this is a good. Rob, do you think that this is a good example of the term forever? I mean, certainly. Now, maybe people will say, well, see, you're using the term forever, but it doesn't actually mean forever. But just like the flat earthers try to say that the corners of the earth mean that the earth is flat. No, they're giving us imagery, right? Just like Paul doesn't have bowels of love for us, right? He's talking about the way that he feels about people. So he's using an analogy. And within the scriptures, I think that we have to understand that human writers use words like that. I think that this in the Jonah 2:6, I think that this is an example of that. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, le'olam is the word we're talking about. Le'olam.
Right.
I don't know if maybe you already said that. So le'olam, does it mean forever or not? And then you mentioned a passage concerning the priests or Jonah, but also in Exodus, it's Exodus 20, what is it? Exodus 21:6, where when there's a slave who's to go free after 6 years, if he says, "Oh, I love my master and I want to stay," etc., he gets his ear pierced, and it says he will be his slave forever.
Right.
And this is a classic location where Martin Luther pointed this out and says, this can't mean forever.
Yeah, it says that, once again, this Vanity Fair, and this wasn't the only place. I looked at probably 5 or 6 articles. They all bring up that one place.
Yeah.
Well,
but what it means is it means fixed and
for the rest of his life.
So in the case of the slave, that's the slave le'olam, it means when the Jubilee comes, there is a legal precedent that this is exemption, because this is a fixed. It's not relating to how long. It's understood that the slave's going to die at some point, but the point is that this is a irreversible trajectory.
Right.
This is fixed, and so, but it has some semantic range. The very first occurrence. Does anybody know the very first occurrence of le'olam in the Bible is at the expulsion from the garden, lest they eat and live forever. Right. So you could say, oh, well, what does live forever there mean? Well, clearly it means the opposite of what happened as the consequences of Adam and Eve eating, which is they're going to die. So you see le'olam, and it's translated into Greek, eis ton ionon, I think it is. It's used in Hebrews to say you are a priest forever, right? It says you are, your dwelling place is le'olam, is forever. Like forever is just one way that we capture in English the Hebrew idiom.
I had another.
The Hebrew idiom has to do with fixed, like this is a fixed deal. It's not going to change in the future.
Look, let's talk about this. There's a couple of things.
It's like the Sabbath command is a covenant le'olam between me and Israel.
Right.
They'll say, oh, it doesn't mean le'olam. It doesn't mean forever there. It only means for a dispensation. That's a
Okay, let's talk about that though.
Clever tool. That's a clever interpretive tool for someone who's weaseling out of.
I agree.
Scripture.
I agree with you, but let's talk about that for a second. I think where this argument is going to make the most sense is in the world to come. In other words, are all of the laws of Torah fixed throughout eternity? Well, I would say, yeah. I would say yes. But some people are going to say, well, if you look at like the laws of the tabernacle, they have all these laws about carrying this and carrying that and whatnot. And, you know, that the priests are supposed to do this. And there are places where it says they're supposed to minister in front of the curtain in the tabernacle forever. Well, I would agree that there is a time when that gets supplanted over to the temple. They're still supposed to minister forever in front of the curtain, right? Now, could it mean that when Christ comes back and we come into eternity with him, that things change? Yeah, I suppose that they could change. And people are going to say, aha, see, so forever doesn't mean forever because it's going to change. I'm sorry, but I just don't see in the Torah places where people are pointing to forever that you don't have either poetry that is, setting up some kind of a imagery, or the idea that something, just like Rob said, that something is fixed for this entire time, right? The temporal time that we have on earth, it's fixed for that time. Another one that people point to is First Kings 8:13 and 9:3. I have indeed built you an exalted house, a place for you to dwell in forever. And the Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you have made before me. I have consecrated this house that you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all time. And people will point it and say, well, that temple's
remind
not
me
there.
that verse, Caleb.
It's actually in two different chapters. It's in 1 Kings 8:13 and then 1 Kings 9:3. So they
8:13 and 9:3.
Yeah. And the point here is simply that I still believe that God's eyes and ears have been set in that place. It's imagery to say that this is the place that the temple will be. And I believe that it'll be there again. A lot of this comes from
the end of Revelation. The end of the Bible is about the New Jerusalem. Like, it's still Jerusalem,
right?
Right. I mean, it's just because we're in a temporal situation. It's like similar to the Babylonian exile. They might have thought the same thing. Daniel, Ezekiel. I thought you said it was forever. Guess what? It is forever, because as Jeremiah had said, the clock was ticking on the exile, because it said the land will enjoy her Sabbaths, the Sabbaths that you didn't give her. In other words, the one who oversees the covenant is still overseeing the covenant. Israel is, just like read Daniel 9, Israel is in a position of recognizing, we violated the covenant, and we're still part of the covenant because this is the terms of the covenant being meted out to us. And he promised that with repentance, that he will bring us back. And so that happened. So when the second temple is being built, they're going, oh, okay, we're members of a covenant. There's like that God is watching over continually. Here we are back in the land again. And where we are now historically is just an extended exile period. But that doesn't mean, there could be 1,000 more years of exile. God doesn't care. It doesn't, that's not evidence that he's no longer upholding the covenant.
Yeah.
So the covenant is still eternal.
I think that those, the Christians who are pointing to the idea that forever doesn't always mean forever, the examples that are given are weak at best. They're grasping at straws. And the reason why is because they need to change. And hey, man, talk about railing against the Christian church. The reason the Christian church is in a lot of the state that it's in today is because they've given up on God's law. God says that his law is perfect, right? David says the law of the Lord is perfect. Well, then why did it need to change? It didn't. The point is that the Christian church has moved away from the law of God. And because of that, you're having all sorts of problems, not just among the liberals. Mind you, it's against this is a target for all churches, even the really conservative churches. You're having troubles. And the reason why is because you are not conforming to the law of God. Now, this is going to change. I truly believe that the prophecies say that the Gentiles are going to start keeping the Torah. We're starting to see this. And I think that the church, as it is today, is going to have to go through another reformation. There are people fighting really hard against it, man. Really hard against it. And I continue to go back to another problem that the church has had. It's not just that they've given up on the Torah, it's that they have created this separate entity from Israel, which is the church. The notion that the church has replaced Israel or is somehow separate from Israel is, I think, one of the biggest theological missteps that has led to so much of this. Because what they can say is, well, then the Torah is for Israel, it's not for us. There's all different ways that they can wiggle out of different stuff. If we start to see that the new covenant was given to Israel and Judah and not to the Gentile nations, then all of a sudden we have to admit, hey, look, when you become a covenant member, you become an heir according to promise, and you enlarge Israel. This is the point. This is the point that I think the church has really, really gotten off on. And I think I think that the Hebrew roots movement is actually a step towards Torah observance, which I think is very great. I think that just like in the Reformation of the 1500s, what you have is you have people coming to the truth, and they're still trying to rein in all of the people who kind of go off into left field, right? People leave the Catholic Church and they're like, sweet, now we're not part of the Catholic Church, and all sorts of errant doctrine happens. And so we're seeing the same thing with the Hebrew roots movement. I think that that's another reason, back to our first conversation, I think that's another reason that we're pushing so hard on the Hebrew roots movement, is to say, look, you guys are all over the place. The theological missteps are not, far between. They are very close together.
It's like this. It's like the hope that I see within like the Hebrew roots movement is the initial, if the initial impulse is, wait a minute, that comes from a desire to read the Bible more carefully and seeing kind of some crumbling edges around the traditions of men. That I'm all on board for that. But then what happens next is I've seen too many people go on the Indiana Jones crusade. Like they're going to find the lost Ark of the Covenant kind of thing. And they're going to do it by Hebrew word pictures and, ancient texts that the Christians didn't want you to read and stuff like that, rather than actually going, oh, this is part of the tradition of always reforming, right? This impulse is actually enculturated by the same spirit of the reformers. And now, okay, but what does it mean to be responsible in that position rather than lead everybody off the cliff, like just run right off the cliff into a great ravine? You don't want to do that. It takes great care. And so you have to be more responsible than the church you're criticizing, not less. It's just the same thing. Like Yeshua says, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. That means whatever they're doing, you have to get it. You got to understand what their number is, and you got to be more on top of it than them. It's not just those scribes and Pharisees, they're clueless. Don't listen to them at all. That's not what Yeshua said. So this is a matter of stewardship and responsibility, with recognizing the gravity of the situation of what it means to care for Yeshua's flock, which is because the same view that says, wow, that these traditions are crumbling around the edges and there's a gap between what my church is doing and what's in the Bible. The very next thought would be, and I care for Yeshua's flock. They need good food.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, well, what is good food? How is, if I'm criticizing the way the church is caring for the flock, how am I going to offer support or be be someone who's going to recognize the needs of the flock in a way that the church seems to be blind to because of the plank of tradition in their eye. Well,
Right.
it sure as heck isn't going out and bringing in the book of Enoch and Jubilees and
Yes.
divine, what do they call it? The divine council or Hebrew word pictures or lost tribes. None of that is going to benefit the flock.
Wicked smart.
Let's
Let's talk about a couple of comments in the chat room. Johnny says, is the forever clip from Toy Story? No. Man, all y'all are missing out. Go watch The Sandlot. It's like one of the greatest movies of all times. The dog is put on a leash under the house forever. Anyway, okay. And then we have Maria says, people say to me, I'm not Jewish, so I don't have to follow the Old Testament. 1 John 3:4 disagrees. Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. Torahlessness. And then, what was the other one? Was that it? So do you think that your perception of no respect for authority from the Hebrew roots could actually be a desire to not have misplaced authority? Well, yes, possibly, but ultimately the idea of no authority comes from people like Michael Rood and Lou White, who called seminaries cemeteries. And the idea that higher education was a waste of money. I'm in
and went
seminary
on to sell snake oil.
Yeah, exactly.
And to promote other snake oil salesmen.
Yeah.
And to give them an air of legitimacy.
Right.
But that's not caring for the flock. That's not caring for Yeshua's flock.
Yeah,
and so
I mean,
that's a big question there is care for others, because rejection of authority, let's say a pastor says something that hurts my feelings and I'm like, or offends me, I'm offended, or hurts my pride. That's all me, like, oh, forget that guy. I'm never coming back here. That's all about me. I've made it all about me. But if you're like, wow, I want to connect and help edify, right? I want to be edified in my faith, and I want to, minister in a way that edifies others or that points out the majesty and glory of Yeshua in the scriptures in a way that is the way that it is. It's wonderful. And things are obscuring that. Do I get mad at the pastor and storm out? Or do it's like, wow, this is a real sticky problem. How do we get good food to Yeshua's flock? How do we get good food and water to the souls of the body? Right.
So
that's the core question.
So here's
what are the things that obscure that or obstruct that supply chain of getting the goods, nourishing, food and water and protection for the flock? What gets in the way of that?
So
false doctrine, false teachers, people trying to bring in new books, sowing seeds of like, oh, you can't trust those, there's books that they didn't want you to read. It's just like the serpent in the wilderness or in the garden. Oh, did God really say that? There's other stuff that's being withheld from you.
Here's the thing. I think that, and I mean, I can give you examples of my own life. When I got into seminary, I thought, okay, let's take Old Testament first because it'll be easy because I am very well versed with the Old Testament, right? And the thing is that I learned more from my Old Testament class in seminary than I had in 20 years of Old Testament studies, prior to that. I think that the Hebrew roots view comes to higher education and teachers saying the people in the church have nothing to teach me. They've gotten so much wrong that they have nothing to teach me. Whereas I think the Christian view, there might be some of that, But I think that the Christian view, more than not, I would say, is that I can learn from other teachers. It's not just my pastor. I can learn from other people. And I might have some things wrong. Now, I might be wrong on that, but when I come into a Christian seminary now, I'm trying to learn as much as humanly possible from the people who are teaching me. And the reason why is because they have put in a huge amount of work. They know something about the text that I don't. Now, we might disagree on certain issues, but I'm learning a ton from my seminary teachers. And I think that the Hebrew roots view is, I know that we've really hit on this a lot, but I think that the Hebrew roots view is more of, I have something to teach them. They don't have anything to teach me. All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, everyone in the chat room, for being a part of the chat room.
Real quick, I was wondering, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I think Tim Hegg wrote an article on that initial part of Acts 16, and Caleb's written a commentary on Acts. But I think there was an article addressing the issue of Timothy is he Jewish or not? It might just be a final chapter in Fellow Heirs. Does anybody know? Someone asked about that. And so I would say probably Tim Hegg's book, Fellow Heirs, would be a good place. Again, this is just on the far recess of my brain, but I think Tim has a chapter on this issue of, from Acts 16, can we tell, whether the patrilineal or matrilineal principle within Judaism was in play, that he addresses that kind of thing. And also I did peek into the chat room also and saw Nilda's question about what we call the documentary hypothesis. And I don't think Torah Resource has anything published on that because it's just so far out. It's based on the idea that no, Moses didn't write the Torah. We don't even know if Moses really existed. What happened was Jews coming out of Babylon had a bunch of stray stories in their library, or from different times and places, and they kind of stitched them together and created something we call the Torah of Moses. And it really is like a quilt. It's like a patchwork of all these different sources. And they'll say that's why you read Noah's story, it says he has 2 of every animal, and then all of a sudden it's 7 males and 7 females of every, and it's so those, they say, oh, I'll explain that to you. Those are 2 completely different stories from ancient times, and what the Jewish priests coming out of the Babylon captivity stitched them together to make them one. Another is Genesis 1 is one creation account. Genesis 2 is a completely different creation account from the ancient times. They were taken and stitched together to make a new kind of story. So that's what the documentary hypothesis does. It's not scripture as inspired at all. It's not a revelation. It's just men telling stories and trying to preserve a library. That's what the documentary is. So when you see J, that represents, those are stories from Judah at a certain time. The E is those are stories from Ephraim from the north.
No, that's not right.
Yeah, it is.
No.
Well, J,
Elohim.
It corresponds to Yahwist and Elohist also, but it's the same thing, because the Yahwists are the ones in Judea, Elohists are in the north, and with Ephraim, the priestly and the documentary hypothesis, documentarians, which are Deuteronomians. Sorry, all the letters are scrambling. It's alphabet soup.
So there is a new book out called "Murmuring Against Moses: The Contentious History and Contested Future of Pentateuchal Studies" by John Bergsma and Jeffrey Morrow. I have not personally read this book, but I just bought it, and apparently the entire point of this book is to dismantle and show a strong argument against JEPD theory. So I'm excited to read it. And I think
about 20 years ago, a guy, Harold Bloom, wrote The Book of J. So he's saying, and that was written by a woman, right? So he says the J source, which is what they call the Yahwist or the Judean source, was written actually by a woman. So then he sold 1 million copies or whatever. It's crazy, but it's not, those are not people who are actually disciples of Yeshua, in my opinion, that are advocating that. Now, maybe the book Caleb's talking about are people who are bringing a much needed response.
All right. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to send your emails in, chegg@torahresource.com, chegg@torahresource.com, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. Yeah, we hope that this conversation has done at least one thing, and that is to glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua the Messiah. Why? Well, you know why. Because Messiah matters.